Welcome to, what is this, week 4 now of the sourdough era course, and today we are making sourdough bagels. So far we've done how to make a sourdough starter, we've done making sourdough bread, sourdough focaccia, and now we are on to sourdough bagels. We have 2 more parts to this series. We have cinnamon rolls and sandwich bread, and those are our last 2. So hopefully by the end of this course, you're gonna feel comfortable making a variety of different sourdough recipes. So thanks for joining me today. As always, I will save this afterwards, so you can always come back, rewatch it. And I also will be sending out an email recap. If you aren't on my email list, I will put that in my stories afterward today. You can join my email list, and then you can get the recaps from all of the previous 3 sessions, as well as the recap for this one. That's where I'm going to share all the links that we talk about today, things like that. So if you're just joining, we are making sourdough bagels today. So excited to have you guys join me. All right, we're going to give it just 1 more minute before we get started. In the comments, right here in the comments, let me know. I want to work on a new sourdough bagel flavor, so I'm curious which one you guys are most interested in. I've been looking at either a cinnamon sugar, like a cinnamon crunch, a pumpkin one, or cinnamon raisin. So let me know in the comments which one you would want to see first. But that's what we'll be working on. Oh, I think my water is starting to boil. Hold on 1 second. We're not quite ready for the water yet. Okay, let's get started making our sourdough bagels. So I just mixed up our dough here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, what ingredients do you need in sourdough bagels? It's pretty easy. It's just bread flour. You can use all-purpose flour, but you need to reduce the water just a little bit, just because all-purpose flour doesn't absorb the water as well as bread flour. Bread flour also creates like a chewier bagel, which is kind of what you're going for with bagels. So you need bread flour, a little bit of sugar. It's just like a tablespoon, I think. I need to pull up my recipe. But you could, just a tablespoon. Or you could also swap that out for honey or maple syrup if you'd rather have a natural alternative. Either one works. You don't have to make any changes if you do that swap. We also need water in this recipe and salt. And then our active sourdough starter. So it's just 5 ingredients, and I promise these are going to be like the best bagels that you've ever made in your life. So it's really easy to make. You're going to put all of those ingredients together in a mixer. Let's talk really quickly about mixers, because I don't want anybody to break their KitchenAid over this. Your KitchenAid mixer, unless you have a bigger one, I have a 5-quart Artisan KitchenAid right now. It could not handle this dough. We're kneading this for like 15 to 20 minutes. Somebody's asking what brand is my mixer. I will get to that in just 1 second. But the KitchenAid mixer is just, it doesn't have a powerful enough engine for this, and I don't want anyone to ruin their KitchenAid over making bagel dough. So I would not recommend putting this in there. It just starts overheating, and then your motor eventually could break. So don't recommend using your KitchenAid unless you have a stronger motor on, like some of the bigger KitchenAids could handle it, possibly, from what people tell me. But I have a Bosch mixer. I'll show it to you. This is what it looks like. It's really good for handling doughs. I will say I like having both my KitchenAid and my Bosch mixer. I feel like they can serve different purposes. Like if I just need something quick and easy, I don't like to pull out my huge old Bosch. I don't keep this on my counter, whereas my KitchenAid I do keep on my counter. So if I'm like mixing a batter, like a cake batter, or making icing or something like that, I like to use my KitchenAid for that. Not saying you can't use your Bosch mixer. You can. They have different attachments. But I just prefer my KitchenAid for that. But if I have a lot of cookie dough, or bread doughs that are thicker, this is where the Bosch is going to be a workhorse. I'm getting some questions, so I just want to make sure I'm getting it. Somebody's asking, can you do this by hand? Absolutely. You can totally knead by hand. It'll be a great workout for you. I'm also going back and seeing what you guys were voting on here for the cinnamon, a lot of the cinnamon sugar. See, oh, it's pretty split in here. Okay, well, maybe I'll have to do all of them at some point. Okay, but yeah, Bosch mixer, really good for, this thing is a workhorse. And when I first bought this a few years ago, I'd reached out just to see what people thought about it. People were telling me they've had their Bosch mixers for like 30 years. So it is an investment, but they do last forever, which is awesome. Okay. Somebody's asking about malt. I'll get to that in just a little bit, okay? But back to mixers. Bosch mixer, great for kneading the dough, but you can also knead it by hand. What we're looking for when this dough is kneaded is for the dough to be able to pass what's called the window pane test. And when you start kneading this dough, it is a lower hydration, so it is going to feel very tough at first, but over time you can see how this dough has become very like soft and workable. And I can pull this thin enough to where I can see light through it at this point. This is called the window pane test. What the window pane test does is it indicates that the gluten has developed enough. When the gluten is developed enough, it's going to help the dough to hold structure, and it also helps enhance the texture of your finished good. So, highly recommend kneading it to window pane. Okay, so once we have our dough, like see, just trying to give you an idea of the texture, just how soft it is. And I don't use malt in my recipe. I just don't think it's necessary. I feel like not everybody has malt on hand. And honestly, with just 5 simple ingredients, these really are the most delicious bagels. Okay, so I'm just gonna pull this out. Now you might be wondering, if you have a Bosch, like what is this bowl? I have I purchased the bottom driver bowl just because the thing in the middle drove me crazy. I can show you my standard bowl here. This is the standard mixing bowl that comes with it. And I will link, I have a coupon code for Bosch. I'll put it in my email. But it has this middle thing that kind of drives me crazy. So that's why I got the bottom driver bowl. It is like kind of stupidly overpriced for what it is. Take as you will. It was a business expense, right? But I do like that it doesn't have this middle thing, because sometimes some of the stickier doughs, it annoys me that trying to get it off this middle thing. But it doesn't bother everyone. Personal preference. Okay, so pull this off my table. Okay, so once we have this dough here, now we are just going to put it in a straight edge container. So my dough that just finished rising was in this one, so that's why it's dirty right now. But I like to use a straight edge container. I feel like a broken record because I've shared about these in pretty much every one of these videos. But I love these things because you can actually see when the dough has doubled very easily. Because it starts at this 1, when it gets to the 2, oh, it's done. I feel like it's sometimes really hard to tell when dough has actually doubled in size when you're just using a mixing bowl that looks like this, because it's not, you know, it's just harder to see. So it's much easier. See how soft and smooth this dough becomes? That is what you were looking for. Okay, so then I could just put it in here. Yeah, you can see here. Don't worry, this was bagel dough in here before. It was about the 1, so when it gets to that 2, it's ready to go. So what I like to do is I mix up my dough in the evening right before bed, and then I let this sit overnight. Now I will note something that happens with your Bosch mixer is that your dough heats up a lot. So yesterday when I temped my dough after mixing it, it was at 85 degrees Fahrenheit. which is significantly warm. And I left it just at room temperature, and it doubled in size in about 7 hours. I did go to bed at midnight last night, so I did catch it pretty quickly. But something to note is if you are using like perhaps a Bosch mixer, and then my house was about 73 degrees last night, so that's why my dough rose pretty quickly. If you are in a warm environment, or you have a mixer that gets your dough really warm, what you can do is reduce the amount of starter in your recipe. So like in this dough today, instead of doing 150 grams, I did 125 grams of active starter. And what that does is it just slows down the process a little bit. So let's say I get more than 8 hours of sleep in a night, and so like 8 hours isn't a great timeline for me. I could go down to the 125 grams of starter, don't have to change anything else in the recipe, and that way it extends that time a little bit, so that, you know, if I need more than 8 hours, then I have that. So up to you kind of what you need from your schedule. And just as a note, I am updating, well, I went through this morning and I made my changes to this blog post. So my assistant is going to be updating this blog post within a couple hours. So if you want to print this recipe, maybe just wait a couple hours and it will have updated tips in there. The recipe isn't changing at all, just adding in some more tips and insight for you guys, because it's been a little bit since I have written that blog post. So just know it's going to have step-by-step photos and a lot more information in this blog post if you just give it a couple hours. Sorry, we didn't, well, it's mostly my fault. I didn't get this done in time for it to be ready right now. Okay, any questions on your dough here? So we are going to leave this overnight. Now, if you wanted to do this same day, like let's say you want to mix dough in the morning and you want to make like bagel sandwiches for dinner or something, you could let this sit at a warmer temperature, like 75 to 80 degrees, and it'll probably be ready in like 5-6 hours. It'll be doubled in size. You can shape them up and then have them ready in time for dinner. So that's an option too if you want to make this same day. It's totally same day friendly. Oops. When you adjust your camera, you put your finger over your mic. Sorry about that. Hopefully didn't miss anything. Okay, just making sure I'm not missing any questions. Sorry, it's hard to go through. I wish there was an easier way to see all the questions. Okay, I'm caught up now. All right, so now I'm just gonna add it here, and I'm just gonna cover it. These are the wild clementine covers that I've talked about a few times. I really like them. It's from a small business here in Oregon. Or she might be in Washington, actually. Not sure, one of those two. But just gonna cover this and then just leave it at room temperature. Now, if your house is really cold, like low 60s, then you might want to find a warmer spot for it. But for the most part, if your house is at I would say a normal temperature, like 68 to 72, 75-ish, it'll be fine. All right, so now we just let that dough rise for our first rise. And then once it is doubled in size, what we're going to do is punch it down, and then we are going to divide the dough into 12. And I already have some dough over here. I've already divided it out to make my life easier. And if you want to be precise, weigh your dough right after it's been doubled, weigh it, and then take that number and divide it by 12 if you want it to be even. I really don't care that much with my family, so these are obviously not super even, but still tastes good. So what you're going to do is make these into 12 circles. So to do that, what I like to do is just bring it together like so. Just pinch it kind of in the middle to make a little dough ball. And then you can just take your hand in cupping shape to make your circle. Okay, and you want to make sure that the bottom is sealed before you start making your bagel holes. Okay, so here's my little ball. I'm gonna do this with the rest of them. And if you'll notice, there are not 12 here, and that's because I already shaped a few earlier so I can boil a couple with you guys. So I'm trying to have it, all the steps here. Okay, so we're going to make it into our circles. Yeah, this one is like a behemoth. Big ol' bagel this one's gonna be. I will note something else too. So my dough was ready this morning about 7 a.m. But obviously I was not doing a live at 7 a.m. I was dropping kids off to school. And so what I did is I just put my dough in the fridge until I was ready to shape it. And that's something that you can do as well. Let's say the morning got away from you and you didn't end up getting to do it, just put that dough into the fridge. Obviously you don't want to leave it for too long as it can start overproofing. When the dough overproofs, then your bagels aren't going to turn out as fluffy or rise as much. So don't leave them for too long, but you know, let's say you don't get to them till 12. You could probably make it to the evening if you really need to. I wouldn't go over 12 hours though, but you can pop it in the fridge for a little while until you're ready for it. And this dough's probably been out for about 20 minutes, so I feel like it's pretty malleable. It's easy to work with. But if the dough's really cold, sometimes it's a little bit harder to work with, so you could just let it sit out for a few minutes before. Okay, so now I made these all into balls, and now what I'm gonna do is make my bagel shape. And what I recommend doing before, a little trick for you guys, before you shape these, cut out little squares of parchment paper. So I'm actually reusing these because I made bagels 2 days ago, so I just held on to these because I knew I was going to be making bagels again. Cut out little squares, about 4 by 4 inches, roughly. I mean, obviously some are better than others, okay, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And we are going to put each of our shaped bagels onto this, because when we do our second rise for about an hour, if we just put these onto, when I used to make bagels, I used to just put them all onto either silicone mat or a big piece of parchment paper. And then when I went to boil them, you know, I'm carefully trying to get these puffy bagels up from the parchment or the silicone, and they start to lose their shape a little bit, start to look a little funky, and then they go into the boiling water and that kind of sets it, and now I kind of have these weird shaped bagels. So if you put them on these, after that second rise, you're just going to pick them up by the piece of parchment paper, and we're going to put this directly into the boiling water. So, little tip for you guys to make sure that you keep your bagels perfectly shaped the entire time. I promise this will save you. I don't know how many times I made bagels on a big sheet and trying to get them up, they always turned out so ugly. So this is the key. But the good news is even an ugly bagel is still delicious, so it's not that big of a deal, but it is helpful. Okay, let's make these into a bagel shape. So I have my round bagel here, and I'm just gonna stick a finger in and make a hole in the middle, okay? Now I have a hole, and now I'm going to stick 2 fingers in, and I'm going to do a little around the world. And you want the hole in the middle to be between 1.5 to 2 inches ideally, because when we let these sit for a little bit, they're going to come back a little bit. And one mistake I made when I first started making bagels is I didn't make my hole big enough, and so when I actually went to bake these, by the time I had boiled them, there was no hole left, and so it was just a holeless bagel. Again, still tastes good, but not what we're looking for in a bagel. So here's what I'm looking for here. And And now I'm gonna put this on my piece of parchment paper. Okay, now I have this, and I'm just going to put all of these onto a sheet pan. Okay, I'm putting these on my USA pan. I will say, I have mixed feelings about USA pans, because if you'll notice here, I haven't had these pans that long, and look at all the coating has chipped. But the reason I'm doing it on this one is because I bought these covers for the USA pans, which is very convenient because then I can put the cover on instead of a tea towel. Currently testing out the Caraway pans, and I'm really enjoying the Caraway sheet pan right now. The only thing is it has the handles on the side, so I can't put a cover on them, which is kind of a little bit of a bummer. Okay, see how it, like, the hole starts going back a little bit, so you don't have, like, when you actually go to bake these, you don't have anything ginormous or anything. Okay, again, poke hole in the middle, and then stretch it out. Okay, I'm trying to watch for anything. If anyone has any questions, you can pop it in. I know, I feel like bagels seem like a scary thing, but then when you actually make it, you're like, oh, that really isn't that, like, it's really not that complicated. And they're actually pretty simple to make, and they're so delicious. They're actually really easy because you just, if you have a stand mixer that you can knead it in, you don't really have to do much work at all aside from shaping them. Oh my gosh, look at the size difference between these two. Oops. Okay, I'll show you guys one more and then we'll move on to the next step. So poke a hole in the middle, stretch it out. And this is why you want it to be like smooth on the top, because that way when you go to shape these, they're nice and smooth all the way around. Okay, you can always stretch them out a little bit more. Okay, and then once I have all of these, what I'm gonna do is I am going to cover either with it like a actual cover, or you could just put a damp tea towel over top of them. And you're gonna let them sit for like 30 minutes to an hour. They are not going to double in size. Somebody said they've made an air fryer bagel before. That's cool. You are not looking for these to double in size. They won't really double before you go ahead and boil them. Honestly, sometimes I look at them and I'm like, have these even grown at all? It's okay. When you put them into the boiling water, they turn out perfect. So don't stress about it. About an hour in a warm spot, and then they are ready to bake. So when we go to bake these, what we're gonna do first is we're going to boil them in baking soda. About a tablespoon of baking soda to your boiling water, and then we're gonna put our bagels in there. So I'm gonna show you, I have boiling water. We're gonna move to our next location. Hopefully lighting's okay over here. Oh, nobody look at the mess that's over at that table. Okay, you're adding about a tablespoon. Sometimes I measure, sometimes I don't. We're just gonna throw in some baking soda here. This is when we add in the bagels to here. This is going to give us that brown, shiny crust that we want and a nice chewy interior. Okay, so I have a couple bagels I already shaped. I feel like, hello. Let me grab them. Okay, these ones have only been sitting for like 30 minutes, so they really aren't that puffy yet, but we're just gonna boil them anyways, they'll be fine. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna put them parchment paper down into the boiling water. Oh, my water is not hot enough. Depends what size pot you have, but I can fit about 3 in here. And then once this is in the water, now it's easier to grab the parchment paper. It'll come right off. And then it keeps our shape really nicely. You could also use tongs. That would probably be a safer bet. I stressing anyone out? Okay. We're gonna let these boil about a minute each side. So I'm gonna get a little flipper. Okay, we'll let these sit. And then what we're going to do is after these boil, ideally we would already have our oven preheated. I haven't preheated mine yet to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. And then these bake for about 18 to 20 minutes. Okay, it's probably been about a minute. We'll flip them over. Okay, and then let them sit for a little bit longer. And then we are gonna add our toppings. So we'll give it another second. And then we're going to put these on a parchment lined pan or on a silicone mat, whatever you wanna do. I'm just gonna grab a silicone mat real quick. Here's my caraway baking pan I was talking about that I've been liking. Pretty, really pretty blue on the back. Okay, let me get a silicone mat. Okay, and then I'm just going to try and drain off any excess water and then put them over here. These aren't my prettiest bagels, but I was also running behind, so I was rushing to shape these before I had to get on the live. But you know, still tastes good. Okay. All right, let's move back over here. Ooh. Sorry if I'm making anyone sick. Okay. Ooh. Okay, that's good enough. Okay. Stepping on my mixer down here. Okay. Oh, I need to scoot this back. Okay, now you should see. Okay, now I have my bagels here, and if I want to add, especially like seeds or seasonings, you want to do it while the bagels are still damp. So I'm gonna add a little bit of the Everything Bagel seasoning. This one is from, this is Costco, right? Kirkland is Costco. Just gonna add some onto here. And then just take my damp bagel and press on the seeds. Just like so. Then I'm going to put 6 bagels. You could probably actually fit 8 bagels on a pan, or you could do 6 and 6. And then you're gonna bake these. So you could just keep them plain. You could do like a cinnamon sugar mix that you could put on top, dip them in. You could do, we like to do cheddar and jalapeno. That's really good. Or just sprinkle some cheese on top. If you have any good ideas, you can put your favorite in the comments. Okay, somebody's asking if I've used I don't even know how to say that, diastatic malt powder in place of the baking soda. Now, I always just use baking soda. It's what I have on hand. I don't have malt powder on hand, so for me, it's just easier to use baking soda. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss any other questions. If I missed your question, you can repeat it here. Okay, so let's see. So we mix our dough, knead our dough, let that sit overnight. I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit. And then once it's doubled in size, divide it into 12, make our balls, poke a hole in the middle, shape them, let those sit for about an hour. Then we're gonna boil them. Then we're going to bake them 425 degrees for, I always end up doing about 20 minutes. So 20 minutes. And then you're gonna have the best, most delicious bagels that you've ever had in your life. Highly recommend doing it. It really is so much easier. I feel like bagels seem intimidating, but they're really not. Add your toppings of choice, bake them up. Delicious bagels. And that's how you make sourdough bagels. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before I end? I feel like this one was really short because bagels really aren't that complicated. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come through, but I feel like sometimes it takes a minute. So I'll just give, okay, what is your suggested bagel weight? So I actually just weighed these right before when I was shaping these ones. These come out to about 108 grams per bagel. I can show you a finished bagel. Hold on one second. Oh, and somebody is asking for the recipe. Sorry, I don't even think I mentioned this. This recipe is on my blog. If you just go to countryroadsourdough.com and then you search sourdough bagels, they will pop up. You can get the recipe there. Like I was saying, if you want to print the recipe, just give me like 2 or 3 hours and the recipe will be updated with more tips and tricks. It's still the same recipe if you go and print it now. We're going to be adding in just a few more insights and things if you want to wait to print it in just a couple hours. Okay, my kids demolished these bagels I made yesterday, and my husband and me, I guess. So I don't even have a full one here, but here's a half-eaten bagel for you to see the size of it. You can imagine about the size, and this is about 108 grams of dough per bagel. And yes, I am going to be saving this live, so you can come back and watch it anytime that you would like. Make sure you get on my email list so you can get the links to everything. I will also share the bagel recipe link. Once I post this, you'll be able to comment, email, and then that will take you directly so you can catch that recap email along with all of the recap emails from the other 3 weeks of this course. Okay. When would you add raisins? If you want to add raisins, you can add that to the dough while you're kneading the dough if you want to. Somebody's asking if they can add cheese to the dough. Totally, you could add cheese if you want. Okay, somebody said that their bagels are getting wrinkly after they cool down. Like before you bake them or after they cool down from eating, after baking. I'm assuming you mean after baking. If they are all wrinkly, that could be a sign that maybe your dough was overproofed, so you let it rise for too long. So it starts overproofing and they start deflating a little bit. Could be a possibility. Somebody also asked, do you Okay, just make sure. Love that you showed a half-eaten bagel. Yeah, well, you know, that's what it's like living in with kids. I'm just showing up as my authentic self. That's what you get. You just get the real me here. Are bagels difficult to make? You'll have to go back and rewatch the live, but no, they are super easy. They are easy to make and so delicious. Okay, somebody said that theirs is getting wrinkly after baking, and someone said after boiling. So with both of those, here's what mine looks like after boiling. If they're getting really wrinkly, most likely overproofing. So shorten your rise times a little bit, or like we talked about at the beginning, you could decrease the amount of starter that's actually in your dough. So if you're using my recipe and you are using the 150 grams, and you're noticing like it seems to maybe even triple in size by the time you get to your dough, cut down to 125 grams, and that should help slow down that process. So then they're rising in a better time frame. Okay, make sure. I've done honey in the hot water. Could that be why they're coming out wrinkly? You know, I've heard of people doing honey in the water. I don't know. Actually, I don't actually know if that creates the same, because the baking soda creates like the Maillard reaction. I don't want to get too much into the chemistry of things because I feel like I will explain it wrong. I have to be like typing this out to make it make sense. But I don't know if honey does that same thing. So I don't really, I don't know how honey changes things when you boil. If somebody does know, you could include that. Oh no, you guys couldn't hear me. Sorry, somebody was calling me. Maybe that was why. I don't know what I was talking about when that was happening. But if you couldn't hear me and you had a question, let me know. Anyways, I don't think the honey will make them wrinkly. I just don't know if it has the same reaction as baking soda does. Sorry, I felt like that was a long-winded answer and I didn't really say anything. Okay, can I show the crumb shot? Sure. On a half-eaten bagel? Absolutely. Do they all have butter on them? Probably, because my kids never actually finish anything. They just eat everything. This one looks sad. I think we're updating the photos on my blog post, and we'll have a pretty finished one, not like a dried up one from yesterday that my kids half ate. I don't know why all of these bagels are half eaten in here. Because my children just take bites of bagels and then leave them. And then I bag them up thinking they'll eat them later, but then they won't eat them later. They want a new bagel. They want a fresh bagel. So now I just have 600 half-eaten buttered bagels in here. So that's nice. Okay. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling now. Make sure I don't have any other questions. Yeah, somebody said they use honey and water and no wrinkling. I don't think it would cause wrinkling. I just don't know if wrinkling creates, if honey creates the same reaction as baking soda. I haven't looked into it, so I don't know that information. Okay, anyways, thanks for joining. Good to see you guys. Next week, I'll be back. I can't remember if it's cinnamon rolls or sourdough bread next week, sandwich bread. But come back next Wednesday, and I'll see you there, same time, 12 Eastern Standard Time. Okay, bye.